In 1950, a 15-year-old girl came home from school and found a man she did not know standing in her hallway. He was tall, broad-shouldered. He had large ears that stuck out from the sides of his head. Her mother left them alone together. The man sat beside her on the sofa and asked her about her life, her schooling, her hobbies, her interests. After an hour, he kissed her on the forehead and left. She never saw him again. He died 10 years later without ever telling her his name. The man was Clark Gable, the most famous movie star in the world. And the girl sitting beside him, with no idea who he was his daughter. Her name was Judy Lewis. She had spent her entire childhood having her ears surgically altered, her bonnets pulled low, and her questions about her own family carefully redirected. Because the studio that owned her mother's image had decided, years before Judy was born, exactly what kind of woman Loretta Young was. And a secret daughter with Clark Gable was not part of that image. By the early 1930s, Loretta Young was one of the most recognized faces in Hollywood. She was 22 years old, dark-haired, luminously beautiful, with a quality on screen that the camera translated into something almost otherworldly. She had been working in film since she was a child. By 1935, she had appeared in more than 40 pictures opposite some of the biggest names in the business. She was also, and this mattered enormously in the studio era, devoutly Catholic. She attended Mass. She observed her faith publicly and without hesitation. She was the kind of star that fan magazines could photograph in church without irony. The studio system that governed Hollywood in those years ran on two parallel tracks. There was the public track, the carefully constructed image, the fan magazine profiles, the approved photographs, the narrative of who each star was. And there was the private track, the actual human life happening behind the facade, managed, contained, and when necessary, erased. Loretta Young's public image was pristine, which made what happened in the winter of 1935 both a personal catastrophe and a professional emergency. In early 1935, Loretta Young was cast opposite Clark Gable in Call of the Wild, an adaptation of the Jack London novel. Gable was 34. He was the biggest male star in Hollywood. His face was on the cover of everything. His charm was the kind that photographs could not fully contain. He was also married. His second wife, Rhea Langham, was a socialite 11 years his senior. The marriage was not happy, but it was intact. The production took the cast and crew on location to Washington State, into the Cascade Mountains, where they filmed against real snow and real cold. A major snowstorm hit during production. The cast and crew were snowed in together for days. What developed between Gable and Young during those weeks is documented only in fragments, in Young's posthumous authorized biography and in Judy Lewis's own memoir published in 1994. The accounts agree on the essential facts. There was an affair. It ended when filming did. When the cast returned to Hollywood, Young told Gable she would not continue the relationship. She was a Catholic, he was a married man. Whatever had happened in Washington could not follow them home. Gable agreed. Several weeks later, Loretta Young discovered she was pregnant. She was 22 years old, unmarried, and carrying the child of the most famous married man in the film industry. Under the morality clauses written into every major studio contract of the era, a scandal of this kind could end both of their careers overnight. Young had watched what happened to other stars who stepped outside the carefully maintained moral code. Charlie Chaplin had been pursued across multiple continents by tabloids and government agencies for less. She had to make the pregnancy disappear. The studio system had developed, over 2 decades, an efficient and ruthless infrastructure for managing problems. There were fixers, lawyers whose job was not legal defense but narrative control. publicity departments whose primary function was not promotion but protection, a network of journalists, most notably gossip columnist Loretta Parsons, whose cooperation could be purchased with access and whose silence could be maintained by the same currency. Young's pregnancy was handled with the precision of a military operation. She went to Europe. The official story was that she needed rest. She was exhausted from overwork. The studio confirmed it. On November 6, 1935, Loretta Young gave birth to a daughter in her mother's home in California. She named the girl Judith. The baby was immediately placed with private nurses, then moved to a series of orphanages, hidden from the public, from the press, from almost everyone. For 19 months, Judy Lewis existed in a kind of official limbo. She was alive, she was healthy, her mother knew where she was, and her mother could not acknowledge she existed. Then, when Judy was 19 months old, Loretta Young appeared publicly with a story. She told gossip columnist Loretta Parsons that she had decided to adopt a child. She had selected a baby girl from an orphanage. Her career was saved. Loretta Young did not adopt a stranger's child. She adopted her own daughter. Judy Lewis grew up in one of the most famous households in Hollywood. Her mother was a television star through the 1950s, hosting and acting in the Loretta Young Show, which ran for 8 years and won her 3 Emmy Awards. The image Loretta Young projected on that program was warmth, grace, moral clarity, and faith. Judy watched all of it from inside the house. She grew up knowing she was adopted. That was what she had been told. What she was not told was that her adoptive mother was her biological mother. What she was not told was that her father was Clark Gable. What she was not told was that virtually everyone in Hollywood already knew. Because Judy had his ears. Clark Gable's prominent ears were one of his most recognized physical features. Fan magazines had photographed them for 2 decades. They were as identifiable as his mustache. Judy had the same ears. Hollywood insiders looked at her and knew immediately. Her mother's friends knew. Her schoolmates' parents knew. People who had never met the family knew. Loretta Young responded to this by having her daughter's ears surgically pinned back when Judy was 7 years old. She also insisted the girl wear bonnets and hats in public whenever possible. The operation was painful. The reason for it was never explained to Judy. She was simply told she needed it done. Years later, as an adult, she wrote about what it felt like to undergo surgery as a child for a reason she did not understand. To fix a feature that connected her to a father she had not been told she had. In 1950, Loretta Young was filming a new picture with Clark Gable. It was called Key to the City. Judy was 15 years old. One September afternoon, she came home from school and found Gable standing in the entry hall of her mother's house. Her mother left them alone together. Gable sat beside Judy on the sofa. He asked her about her school, her interests, her life. He listened carefully to everything she said. After about an hour, he stood up, kissed her on the forehead, and left. Judy Lewis later wrote about that afternoon in her 1994 memoir, Uncommon Knowledge. She wrote that she had no idea who he was to her. She knew he was Clark Gable, the movie star. She did not know he was her father. He had promised Loretta Young he would never tell Judy. He kept that promise. Clark Gable died of a heart attack on November 16, 1960. He was 59 years old. Judy Lewis was 25. She still did not know. 6 years after Gable died, in 1966, Judy Lewis was 31 years old. She had married, she had a daughter of her own. And she had spent her adult life unable to explain to herself why she had always felt like a stranger inside her own family. Her fiancé had told her years earlier, before they married, that it was common knowledge she was Gable's daughter. She had been stunned. she had not believed him. She finally confronted her mother. Loretta Young confirmed it. Her exact words, as Judy Lewis recorded them in her memoir, were these: "Well, he was your father. He was darling, sweet, and very gentle. He was married, so when I discovered I was pregnant with you, I was frantic and terrified. It would have ruined both our careers, a scandal like that." Young acknowledged the biological truth. She told her daughter who her father was. Then she asked Judy to keep the secret. Judy asked her mother one direct question: would she ever publicly acknowledge that Judy was her biological daughter and that Clark Gable was her father? Young's answer was no. She told Judy she would never acknowledge what she called a mortal sin, her mortal sin. The word mortal sin was the word Loretta Young used repeatedly to describe her own daughter. Judy Lewis published Uncommon Knowledge in 1994. It was the first time the general public learned the full story. Young refused to speak with her daughter for 3 years after publication. When Young was 85, she told a family member that she had come to understand the phrase date rape, and that the encounter on the train, the one that produced Judy, had not been entirely consensual. This detail appeared in a statement from Loretta Young's daughter-in-law in 2015, 15 years after Young died. It changed the shape of everything that had come before. Loretta Young died on August 12, 2000, at age 87. Her authorized biography, published posthumously at her own request, finally confirmed what her daughter had written 6 years earlier. Clark Gable was Judy Lewis's father. The secret that Hollywood had maintained for nearly 60 years was now official. Judy Lewis died on November 25, 2011. She was 76 years old. She had spent her childhood in orphanages and hideaways, her school years wearing hats over surgically altered ears, and 3 decades of her adult life unable to get her own mother to say her name out loud. She became a psychotherapist. She specialized in foster care and the psychology of children who grow up without the truth about who they are. There is a photograph taken in 1961. Loretta Young at an Emmy Awards party, standing beside Judy Lewis. They are both smiling. Both of them know the secret. Only one of them has chosen it. Did you know about this before today? Tell me what you think about how Hollywood managed its stars in the comments.